Welcome to Bulletproof Veteran Podcast. Thank you for your service.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Bulletproof Veteran Podcast. We got a great one for you. I hope you are limbered up, warmed up, and ready for a great conversation because we have on the show Judy Weaver. All right, she is the founder of Connected Warriors. And if you haven't been following their Instagram page and you don't know anything about them, you're going to get a lot of information today. You're going to understand why yoga is so important for veterans and how it can be a huge part of your daily exercise and also the therapy that so many of us need. And if you're a guy like me and you follow Rudy Reyes and all these other guys, these badass warriors, they're all doing yoga, so you should be doing it too. And Judy's going to tell us why. But Judy, thank you for coming on the show.
Hey, Jason, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Anytime I have an opportunity to spread the word, so to speak, I will take it.
Yeah.
So my name is Judy Weaver. I'm a yoga therapist and a yoga teacher. I come from Southern California. I was adopted from South Korea when I was 6 months old. And as I say to everybody, I was adopted by a bunch of white people, and which was a great thing. You know, I grew up in LA area, and my folks were professional dancers. And my sister, who is also adopted, she was born with flat feet, knock-kneed. And my folks back then, and this is in the early 60s, they didn't want any part of doing the braces and all of that. So they said, no, we're going to put the kids in ballet. That'll fix everything. And, it did. It fixed her feet, certainly, in her knees. She has beautiful arches. Her legs are straight, all of that. And for me, it literally saved my life from being born with PTS as as a child born after the Korean War. But I didn't know any of that then. I just thought I was this anxiety-ridden crybaby, right? And I was super sensitive. So fast forward in my life, I met a man in 2007. This is after I became a yoga teacher. And I was really just changed my life. That was my watershed moment. Up until then, I was just a regular yoga teacher, teach a class, enjoy that. I was super flexible, and I was a lot younger then, so I could just do anything. And it always struck me interesting why my students couldn't do what I was doing. And I didn't have empathy or understand or compassion for their, as I call it, being blessed with stiffness. And now I understand so much more. And, it's that whole Benjamin Buttons kind of thing. If I knew then what I know now, it might have made my road easier. But I think in a bigger picture, I think that's okay. We aren't ready to know then what we know now as we develop and mature our body, mind, and all of that. So my study came from being really sick for about a year and a half. I had a parasite. The doctor said, you can't go into the hospital. There's nothing we can do for you. You just have to stay home and stay away from everybody. And I did that for about a year and a half and got really small and weak. And my girlfriend, as I was starting to come back to life, she drugged me to an Ashtanga yoga class.
Okay.
Yoga world, if you know, Ashtanga is like yoga on steroids kind of concept. It's intense, it's physical, it's about connecting your body, breath, and movement. And for me, that was exactly what I needed. I went to my very first class. I did very little. I was in the back, but it became my life force almost. As I came back to my breath and my body and strength, I was practicing 1 day a week and then, 6 days a week, like a crazy person. And eventually my husband, who's in tech, who was also a veteran, we moved to San Francisco. And that's when I had the opportunity to do a teacher training. And I was very fortunate to train with one of the gentlemen who was, I would say, the first generation in the United States from the lineage from India. So I was really fortunate to do that. Back in those days, I felt that yoga should be enjoyed by every person on the planet because of the benefits, mentally, physical, emotional, spiritual. And my way to do that was to start a program called Yoga Outside. It's Yoga Outside. The school I went to was called It's Yoga. It's no longer in existence. And just as an aside, the owner of the studio, he toured with the Grateful Dead for many, many years. Everybody but Jerry Garcia practiced yoga.
I wonder why Jerry didn't.
I
You would
don't know.
think
I
he
never
would.
asked Larry that. And
Yeah.
his name was Larry Schultz, my teacher. I don't know. But he didn't. He wanted no part of yoga, but every other member of the band practiced religiously. Larry went on tour with them for many, many years. And he ended up back in San Francisco, and the traditional yogi story, he lived upstairs in the studio because he can't afford to live anywhere else. And I was just fortunate to train with him and to study with him and his crew. So when I met Beau MacVane in 2007 here in Boca Raton, Florida, Beau was an Army Ranger, had 5 tours in the Middle East. And when he came back, he was diagnosed with ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease. And his doctor in the Miami VA was really forward thinking and told him to go do yoga, breathe and move while he could. And he was a Boca boy, so he came to the studio. We were, back in those days, we were like the only studio there. And he said, I need to do this. And I talked to him and I said, well, I understand what ALS is, but I don't understand how that works with yoga. Let me do some research and I'll get back to you. So I did the Google thing. I talked to my husband. My husband asked me, he said, you really want to work with a student? You see where this is going? And I told him I did. I was compelled. I have no idea. Even today, I don't know why, but I felt I needed to do that.
Yeah, because it's
So
tough. You know where this is going to go. There's a lot of pain that's going to be at the end of this. You know that. And you know that you're going to be emotionally involved with this person that unfortunately you're going to have to let go of at a certain point because unfortunately there is no cure. So that's a huge undertaking. Huge.
It is. And was starting out, he was 6'4", big guy, really physically fit. He got a football scholarship to college before he went into the Army. And you would never suspect that from this man. And I got to tell you, I wrote a brief thing after he passed, but he was truly the most courageous person I know, not even related to his military service. It was the afterwards. He would take, so when we started, he would drive himself. He was very mobile. Everything was good. And within 6 months, he was no longer that mobile. He had a cane. He had a walker. He took modified his walker so he could have a seat because he never gave up. And this is what I find with warriors. You guys are warriors till you're dead. My father, who adopted me, he was World War II, second day Normandy. And as a professional dancer, he had the core strength, but until he passed, he was still that warrior. He refused to let you help him up. I can, or sit down for that matter. And with Beau, I just found that he was teaching me so many lessons on how to be courageous when you understand the end game, right? And I think that is one of the aspects for me, the underlying as to why I feel this passion to provide this service, especially for our veterans, our active duty, and their family members, because who else goes and does something where this is a life and death potential? First responders do, but really, if you think of it, it's the largest tribe in the world that joins or is part of this, and the courage that requires to do it with a smile is just tremendous in my mind.
Yeah. It's the biggest fraternity, and it's the biggest alumni you could be a part of. We say that all the time, that and you instantly know when somebody is a veteran that you can have a conversation with them if you're a veteran as well. There's a commonality. There's this language between the two, even if you're crossing generations and you're talking to, say, a world. I would love to sit down with I would sit down with a World War II vet tomorrow and have the most amazing conversation, just because I would love to hear the stories and I would love to hear the experiences and compare them to my own, So it's true. It's a fraternity. It's an organization.
And Jason, yeah, you're so right. My dad would never talk about the war growing up as kids. And they adopted my sister and I when they were later in life, never would speak about it at all. But he would talk to my husband. because my husband's a vet. Even though, and he was a vet in the 80s, so it was during the Cold War time, nothing like this. The biggest thing going on the radar was Chad back then. And not the little Chads, but the country Chad.
Yes, yes.
And it wasn't until for my husband, until after 9/11, that he then, because once you're in the military circle, the tribe, the fraternity, whatever you want to call it, they always know who you are. So those people, whoever those people are, reached out to my husband, and he helped on many fronts. And eventually he actually deployed as a civilian contractor twice to the Middle East.
Oh, wow.
It was, yes, he was, he took, and I can speak about it now, but he, in Leatherneck, right, that was a forward operating base, he brought Wi-Fi, and he said he was never more proud of anything he has done in his life than to have the Marines come up to him, shake his hand, and say, thank you for giving me this opportunity and the ability to connect back to home and to see my family. He even went, it was the first birth on, quote, I guess, Zoom back then. I don't know if it was Zoom, but whatever the platform was, that the Marine saw his wife back home giving birth.
They actually did it through like the phone?
Through the phone.
That's
and
cool.
They actually went into the general's office and used, because he had the best Wi-Fi on the camp.
Oh, of course.
And so it was just an experience. But on the flip side of that, my husband, who was served during Cold War when he was active duty, did not have PTS or even trauma because it was a different time and place. He deals with that now because it's a different time and place. So with Beau, he went from the walker to having to have a wheelchair, and then he fell at one point pretty badly, and that's when he stopped driving. But in the time he was walking, he took his parachute apparatus, harnesses. He strung up a zip line in their backyard. They have a pretty big backyard. And until he couldn't do it anymore, he would walk from one end of the backyard to the other, back and forth, to keep his strength. That's what warriors are like. And I find people don't understand that. They just don't understand that. They have different questions they ask veterans, but to understand that innate sense of purpose, of mission, of that, I don't know, just that being. People don't really get that unless you really work with veterans or you have a veteran in your family. So from there, I worked with Beau and his family for 2.5 years in the softer sides of yoga, as I call it. As you know, for those people who know me, I am not the happy crap kind of yoga teacher. I don't go down that road. I'm pretty straightforward. I bring it to reality. I don't talk about when you reach your arm up, you're not touching the stars, sun, and sky, because unless you're outside, the ceiling is up there. When you look down, unless you're outside again, it's not the ground or the earth, and it is under us, but it's the mat or the floor. And I found that those small things really led me to the ability to create the trauma conscious yoga protocol for veterans, because you guys are based in reality. This whole metaphysical, you're like, yeah, okay, right. You want me to see the stars through the ceiling? And your head would go that way because it's not realistic. And so that was one of the benefits for me in creating this. But for Beau and his family, it was truly all the softer sides of yoga. The ability to meditate, the ability to go within, the ability to create space between your thoughts. And for Beau, I have to say this, we hear a lot of bad rap about the VA. We do. Everybody knows.
Of course.
You know, it's an organization that's underfunded, overserved, because they don't have enough staff to really service all of our veterans, of which there's 22 million. And but for Beau, he was able to get all of the technological equipment to make his life towards the end easier. Like equipment, a machine that he could sit in, or it would bring him to stand. The ability to communicate, because he had the setup where he could use his eyes as a directional, and he could send an email.
Very cool.
It was tremendous for him. And sadly, when he passed, that was heartbreaking for me in so many ways. And at that point, even when he passed, I had not thought about Connected Warriors. I really hadn't. It was the movie The Hurt Locker that got me. After I went to see it, well, while I was watching it, I kept saying in my head, this is upside down. This is upside down. Our military, who is the highest trained in the world, they are totally present in chaos. They are totally not present in peace. And what resiliency, and we talk about what we need resiliency, you have to be resilient, et cetera, et cetera. That's not resilience. It really is not. So my goal when we left the theater, my husband and I turned him and I said, look, that's upside down. I can fix that. Thinking, okay, I would teach a little yoga class. So I reached out to Ralph Iovino, a Vietnam veteran, a Marine, who I had taught to be a yoga teacher a few years before. And he was still going to group and all of that at the West Palm Beach VA. And I said, Ralph, can you bring me some vets? I'm going to teach free yoga. He's like, okay. Well, you know, veterans. So I thought, oh, okay, we will just get vets on mats. Well, for the first 2 months, no one came. Not a big surprise, right?
No, there's a little bit of a stigma. It's kind of like, I'm not going to yoga. You're crazy. Like, yeah, I can see that. I can.
You can see that, right? Yeah. And so Ralph was mortified. Every week would come and it would just be he and I. And I said, no, it's our time. You can get a private session. And we did that until one veteran came, somebody other than Ralph. And then it was another veteran. And the next thing you know, we have 20 veterans coming. And they're bringing their family members. And it crossed all branches of service. So that was kind of the moment where I'm like, wow, this could get some legs. And luckily, we have a local reporter here for the Sun Sentinel. She practices at the studio I teach at. And she had heard about me doing this and all this, that, and the other. And she's like, I want to do a story. I want to do a story. I said, finally, okay, let's do a story. Well, that story got to a woman here who has her aunt up at Murray State University, whose husband's a vet. And we got a call. And I'm like, okay, guys, we're going. So we went up there. Well, what do you know? What's up there? Fort Campbell. Oh, wow. Okay. Fort Campbell's right up there. Interesting. And so the next thing you know, after a couple of visits and we get a class going there, I'm like, look, we need to go to Fort Campbell. We need to take this on base. So we made our way on base, and we had a meeting. And one of the local teachers there who was in the Army for many, many years, she was a contractor on the 160th side.
Okay.
Special ops side. And she just said, no, I'm bringing this Connected Warrior class to the base. And that's how we got our foot in the door for active duty. And it's like you said, you think of all the Navy SEALs. Yes, Navy SEALs have been doing yoga for many, many years. They don't really call it yoga. I don't know what they call it, but they don't call it yoga, but they've been doing that.
Yeah.
It's just tremendous when I see in the different branches of service, how they're utilizing the tools that come out of this in their jobs, in their day-to-day, in how they return home from deployment, in all their aspects. And it's pretty tremendous. For me, I taught JROTC here in Boca. That year, Commander Bingham, he's on our board now, 22-year Navy pilot, fighter pilot, retired. All he wanted to do was go back into the Navy. As we all know, all of our veterans, once they get out, it's like, well, how can I get back in? Because that's their comfort zone. That's where they feel the fraternity. They feel the power of that.
Yeah. My wife had to talk me out of going back to a recruiter. She's like, no, we're not doing that. Because I had that thought. I was like, I could go officer now, because at that time, then I had my degree. I was like, you know what? I could go officer. I could go reserves or guard or something like that. It's part-time. And I'm convincing myself of all the things that while I was saying was completely crazy. Like, you know that guard guy is going to be deployed and go for a year and all this other stuff. And it was my wife who was like, that doesn't really fit right now. That's not going to work.
Right. Exactly. I completely understand, and it's interesting. So when my husband got the call, right, to We want you to go to here, and then we want you to go there. The first here, I was encouraging him because I knew that was something that he just had to do. And so I was not standing in his way. I could have easily, like spouses do, no, that's really not the right time, or that won't work for me. But for me, I knew that was something he needed to do. He really needed to do. After 9/11 happened, because he's in tech, he was called on to go work for Homeland Security on several times. One was to find out what happened. How did the communications drop out in the towers? How did that happen, so that we can change that in these skyscrapers for the future?
Right. So we have better infrastructure.
Absolutely. And then he went and he did a lot of the ports and the railroads, and all that, just to keep us safe here. But I could always tell he wanted to do more. He needed to do more. So for the call that came, he went, and it forever changed him. And, we'll see. He practices, he knows all about this, but we all have to take it right day at a time and see what happens.
Yeah.
But for me, trauma conscious yoga, it's really post-traumatic growth, right? Trauma is, we all have trauma. There's not a living creature on the planet without trauma. It could be big trauma, little trauma. It could be past trauma. For me, I was born with PTS. Now that I understand it, that's what I came out of the womb with. And then staying there for the first 6 months, that's where I am from. And so what is PTS? PTS, because we don't use the D at Connected Warriors, we think that puts you in a box. Mm-hmm. You have a disorder, now I'm this, and you completely identify with that. And the reality is post-traumatic stress is the natural biological after effect of trauma. That's it. That's literally it. And if we were to allow our bodies, like in the animal kingdom, process that trauma the way they need to, we wouldn't have what we have here as humans as PTS, because it would have dissipated throughout our body. If you look at a dog after a bath, what's the first thing they do? They shake like crazy.
That's right. They shake, they run, they run, they rub their body in the ground. Yep.
They do all that because they know they had that little bit of excess trauma energy while they were getting the bath, even though they might enjoy it. They had that and they need to dissipate it. And they're allowed to. We humans were told, especially you guys men, do not show emotion, hold it in. God forbid you cry. Don't cry. And then don't show any weakness. Well, I'm sorry. We're all animals. The only difference between us and the animals who have 4 legs is we walk on 2 feet. We have this little prefrontal cortex and we have opposable thumbs. For the most part, that's our difference. This gets us in trouble. This is cool. And the feet are cool. But other than that, we're animals. And so when we start to process from the brain of what we should or how we should respond to things, that's when the body mind, the totality of us, gets in trouble. And if you think of it from those terms, you can understand, well, okay, if that's the case, well, then we got to get the body back on board first, because if you go after the cognitive mind, I talk about the trauma groove. That's that place inside of us, which we all have, where we go, that is our actual more comfortable place. It feels like our safety net. It's that safe place that we understand. And for trauma survivors that deal with a lot of complex trauma, that space grows smaller and smaller and smaller over time until it's completely enveloped. They're completely enveloped in that. And that then becomes really hard to heal from. But if you allow yourself a space between thoughts and look into how can I get the body back on board, so that when I get triggered, I understand that the body is being hijacked back to that memory, that it's not really happening at this moment. That's when you can talk about the story of what brought the trauma on, and you're just telling a story. But when your body still gets hijacked back to those moments, the trauma still is unresolved in you.
So is that similar? Is that kind of similar to the idea of repressing a memory of something that happened? That's almost kind of the opposite of it, but almost the same effect kind of in a way, where someone might repress a memory, but now they're acting out and they don't know why, because they have this repressed memory, something that they're dealing with that they never kind of fully processed. But then you also have the idea of almost reliving something that's not actually happening. So it's you're almost dealing with it all the time. It's right in, it's happening, but you can't differentiate between reality and that memory.
100%. Think about this. The body mind, the us, it has only one priority, and it's survival. That's it. It will compromise, it'll lie, it'll do whatever it needs to do to achieve that survival. And that survival is predicated upon the chemistry in your body, the electrical goings on, the communication system in the body. And when that gets disrupted, when you change the chemistry by living in your sympathetic nervous system, right, fight, flight, when you live in that space, your whole chemistry, because we're a bunch of chemicals in here, that whole chemistry makeup changes. So I have this concept of, so if we come out of the womb as this clay ball, right? Beautiful clay ball, perfect, it's you. In this clay ball is everything about your ancestors, everything, because we are that, right? It's epigenetics. We are who we come from and all the stuff they bring to the plate too. And now we grow up, we start to develop, we mature, we start to walk, we see, think, all of that stuff. And now it's going to become a clay pot. That's my analogy. So this clay pot has written all of everything that's ever happened to us. And that's where the trauma groove comes in, right? So we get a trauma and that there's a groove. Okay, now life goes on. Maybe you have another one. Oh, it goes back into that groove. At the same time, you have all the other things happening and decorating your clay pot of you. When we're about 29 years old, more or less, that's when the full body mind solidifies. That's the full maturity. So when I hear kids, I think they're kids when they're 19, 20, 21, they're children. Their prefrontal cortex is not even fully functioning. It's not even mature at all. And the whole body is still not mature. The spine is still not mature. The hips are still not fully mature and solidified. So it's about 29. Think of this. You put the clay pot in a kiln. You fire the clay pot. Out comes this beautiful clay pot. Now it's hard. The hard edges on the trauma groove. So when you fall into that groove, it makes it really hard to climb out of again. So what I think of trauma conscious yoga is this finest sandpaper known to man. And all you're doing is you're smoothing the edges of the groove down one sand at a time, one grain at a time, because you could take your hammer and chisel, because Americans are known for, I needed it yesterday. So I'm going to get the hammer and chisel out and beat the crap out of it and it's going to be better. No, that's not how it works. And sadly, for a lot of people, cognitive therapy, talk therapy, not only is that the hammer and chisel, it's going to deepen the groove on a hardened pot. When I looked at the statistics of who served in 9/11 and after, when you look at the numbers, 2/3 of our deployed men and women were under the age of 29 years old. That is very telling in the world of trauma and development and all of that. And so for me, I've always told my board, we can't grow fast enough. We can't expand fast enough, because all I kept thinking of is all the boys and girls, men and women, coming home and they want to then have families. They want to procreate. And the epigenetics is going to be just like Vietnam, because after Vietnam, that's what happened. Our men and women came home. They had children. They went about their lives. They never processed anything. And when you talk to children and children's children of not only Vietnam veterans, but of Holocaust survivors, they were born with PTS. And so for me, it was like, how fast can we grow? How can I get in front of as many active duty, as many young veterans as possible, so that they can clear all this and truly live their most fulfilled life, and their family too.
Well, you're born, like you said, you're kind of born into an environment of that trauma, because if that parent doesn't deal with the trauma, as hard as they try and as good a people as they may or may not be, it's going to go into their children in some way. You're going to either be overprotective, or maybe you're not going to pay attention enough. Something is going to happen that is molded by that trauma, that if you don't work through it and deal with it prior to the birth of a child. I agree with you 100%.
Absolutely. And then think about this. If you have siblings or you have multiple children, they're not the same. And I'm saying with the same mom and dad, they're not the same because, and Smithsonian, they actually did a study and they did it from the male side. So it was the sperm and I've been saying this a long time, at the moment of conception, the state of being of the mother and the father determine the state of being of that child to be. Because again, we're energy. We truly are. We communicate electrically within our body. Right? We have neurotransmitters. That's how we get the information. I have a thought. Okay, here's a movement. That actually there's stuff going on there to make all that happen. And then you've got the chemistry situation. I look at our veterans, and so many of them have dealt with recovery from drugs, alcohol, things like that. And just maybe even extreme behavior, because that certainly is something you can get addicted to also.
Of course.
And it's not that they chose to do that. It's that they had the pain of or numbing, or they needed to quiet down whatever's going on inside because they don't have the ability, because they never learned how to create space between your thoughts, how to create space between action and reaction. You know, I watch, and you know, I'm one of those yogis that's got to be weird compared in the yoga world, because I actually watch and I read a lot about history and war and all of that. And when I see these movies, you can literally see, and I've talked to a lot of veterans, it's almost like time stands still when you're in combat, and things move so slowly because you're so precise and you're so present in the moment. Because you have to be, because if you're not, you might be dead, and then your brothers or sisters in arms will be dead too. So you have to be so present about everything. And then you come out into this real world and you got all this chaos going on, but it's a different kind of chaos. There's no life and death price tag. And so your relationship to that situation is completely different than when you were in combat. And that was where, when you're in combat, you can make those split-second decisions that are correct because you're so present. You can take all that information and make that instantaneous judgment call. Out in the real world, sometimes that's just too convoluted and there's just too much going on, or it's like, are you kidding me? Trash? What? You need me to do this now?
Right.
You know,
it doesn't even matter. Why are we even worried about this?
Exactly. The relevance of it is not as important. And so that's another piece of it, for why come to the body first. Get the body on board, and because the mind follows. In the yoga world, the mind is the body. The body is the mind. They're not two separate things. When you think of PTS is not a psychological event at the beginning. It's a biological, a physiological event. It becomes psychological if held chronically for a long period of time, because then things do change. It's like an addict. If you're addicted to something, whatever that is, do you think that person doesn't know that that's harmful, that that's not in their best interest? Of course they know.
Of course.
They know. What they're addicted to is the chemicals, but they don't get that. They're addicted to the way the chemicals have made their body. So when I said earlier, our body has only one objective, and that's survival. Really, it's truly survival, and it'll compromise anything. So if you start out here, and this is the level of your chemistry, and think about from having one deployment. Okay, so you're living a little more in your hypervigilance, right? You just are. Now you come back from that deployment, but you don't come back to where you were before. You're a little different. Now you have a second deployment. You come back here. Now you have a third deployment. You may not move from there at all. And now you're at your fourth, fifth, sixth, because I know these guys and gals have had that many, where Vietnam did not. Now your chemistry's kind of here, and the body's going, dude, this is me. This is the correct chemistry for me. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to do anything I can to stay here because that's my normal now. Well, it goes the same with take the hypervigilance piece out and just replace it with alcohol or drugs or any other behavior. It's that outcome, is the chemical outcome, is what the body is addicted to.
So So yoga, through the movements, through that connection, the almost bringing back that idea of being present, because any yoga that I've always done, the yogi has always said you need to be present in your movements and you need to be present in your breath and all of that. So you're talking about that combat theater. What makes so many people successful in that world is their ability to be present and hypervigilance and all of that kind of stuff. Yoga can almost mimic that in a way, because you have to be so present to go through the movements, to be connected through your entire body, in through your breath, and how you control every muscle.
Absolutely. And so there's a continual conversation going on with our nervous system, right? Our body is designed to have sensors 24/7. Even when you're sleeping, inside of you, outside of you, and external to you. Because again, survival. Go back to the day where we were living, more to the ground and more to the earth and less into the technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all of that. And so we were very close to understanding those rhythms within our body and what takes us off balance, so to speak. And that's a homeostasis piece. And if you think of those, that perspective, when you understand where all your body parts are in space, that's proprioception. Our root, our primitive being, our brainstem, our spinal cord into the brainstem, that reptilian brain, you hear that, the primitive brain back here, that is our vestibular system. That is our body's GPS or gyroscope, so to speak. Where are we in space and time? Well, proprioception is where the body parts in space and time relationship to the other body parts. Being present means you understand where all your body parts are. It is not a metaphysical sense of anything. It is you know where all your body parts are in that particular moment. And when that occurs, you are present. And how do you get there? So breathing, we hear all about breathing now, with this pandemic. There's a lot of talk. I see, the little commercials, take a moment, calm, just for a moment.
Yeah, they come on at like 2 a.m. You 30-second breathe, and it's a breathing commercial, and there's like raindrops in the background. I'm like,
right.
what just happened? Did we just? It used to be the guy come on and the national anthem would play, and your broadcast day was done. Now I'm being told to breathe at 2 a.m. But
isn't that true? Right?
It's pretty cool.
And so there's only one doorway into our nervous system, and that's conscious breath. That is the only way in. Otherwise, and when I talk about that, I'm talking about our autonomic. It's the side of our nervous system that is our sympathetic, as we know, flight, fight, right, hypervigilance, or the other side, parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest, the chill. That's the side, by the way, we want to live in. The other one we want to go visit. And that's what resiliency is. You can have a moment where you're totally on because something just happened and you had to respond. And that's cool because you need to do that. But you want to be able to ratchet that down almost instantly and go, okay, I'm ready, I'm doing whatever. I'm playing with my kid or, I'm playing with my dog and all that's all good. That's what true resiliency is us to ride the waves of life. And so conscious breathing is strictly, I am inhaling and I am exhaling. Nothing else other than that. Now, there's a lot of parts about respiration and all of that. The majority of the world does not properly breathe. So they're all up here, which creates sympathetic nervous system stimulation, as opposed to down-regulating you in breathing full diaphragmatic breath and all of that. The key to me is, why does this work physically? Because it's the synchronization of breath and movement. Because if breath alone fixed everything, we'd all be fine, because we're all breathing or we're dead. Right. That's kind of straight up. So it's not just the breathing piece. It is truly the synchronization of breath and movement, in addition to what we found is the bilateral stimulation. And that is the piece, I think, those, in addition to what I say, go to your edge. You guys, as combat warriors, you guys go to your edge a lot. And you constantly go to your edge. But it's sometimes, I would imagine, you muscle through to achieve your mission. So I call that over the waterfall. You actually
So you took it a little too far.
You went too far over the waterfall because you had to achieve your mission. Well, human beings, we're tribal by nature, and we're mission oriented. Our brains need a mission. It needs a purpose.
For
we
sure.
do. We just do. And I think that sadly, so many of our veterans coming home don't have a mission or purpose, and they don't have a tribe anymore. And so if I were to say the best thing of Connected Warriors, the yoga's great. Trust me, I'm a proponent for yoga and all of that. It's not that, it's the community. I'll give you a little quick story.
Mm-hmm.
We, we're nonprofit, so you never have money, but there was a time at the beginning where about a year in, we had a few bucks. And before that, all my guys and gals would come to class and they would wear their branches service shirt. And you would have majority of Army, you'd have some Navy, you'd have Marines, and then you would have the lone Air Force guy or girl, and maybe a coastie float in every now and again. That was pretty much it. They never talked to each other. It was like being in high school and you have the cliques, right? You have the sports clique, the nerd clique and all that. That day, I gave out the shirts. They immediately took off their branches service shirt. They put on the Connected Warrior t-shirt, and they started to talk to each other. It became their new uniform, their new tribe. They proudly wear them out. They have conversations with people. It's been tremendous from that perspective.
Isn't it so strange how that happens with clothing? It really is, because I see it all the time. I'll run into a guy at a grocery store wearing a 9-line shirt, and I'll be like, I love that clothing. I have a couple. Been down to Georgia where they have the factory, and I took a tour, blah, blah, blah. And instantly we're talking. Whereas I wouldn't walk up to somebody wearing a Calvin Klein shirt and do that same thing. Like it wouldn't, hey, yeah, I have a Calvin Klein shirt too. No, it doesn't work the same. It doesn't feel the same. But I would totally walk up to a guy wearing a 9-line or a Black Rifle or one of these veteran companies and spark up a conversation, because there's a good chance they're a veteran.
Right.
Or they support veterans, one of the two, and we can have a conversation.
Yeah. No, I so agree with that. Not only that, I wanted to understand a few things as Connected Warriors was developing and growing. One was, can we really convince the DOD to take this on? And so I'm really proud to say that we've not only convinced them, they reach out to us now and say, hey, we need some classes. And it may not be the big DOD, but it's certainly those on post, on base, on, camp, whatever your situation is, they are reaching out and they're seeing it. We have classes in Pendleton. We have classes at Homestead. We have classes at Southcom. We have classes we're up at JBL up in Washington. We have classes in Afghanistan. I don't know where we're at now, but, we had a lot of classes. And our class in Kuwait was one of the most well attended. They did yoga festivals. That was, Yoga Joe, Dan.
Yeah.
He was a supporter of both of the yoga festivals that we participated in there. And it's tremendous. It's really tremendous. But what I have found is, one of the issues, Sebastian Younger, he wrote an article in Vanity Fair, I'm going to get the date wrong, I'm sure, but it was a while ago. And what he said was he was questioning, why are we having so many suicides? What is going on with our veteran population? And what he said was, we have more veterans that are killing themselves, not from the trauma from combat, but the trauma from coming home. And so that has intrigued me for many, many years. So I finally started doing research to why? What is different? What is different now than like when my dad came home? And so there's a lot of differences, but one of them, I think the biggest one, is that in 1947, that was after the World War II ended, 45% of every household in the United States had somebody actively serving, which really translates to 100% of the nation was behind it. They were involved. It was a whole United States effort. In 2017, less than 1% of every household had somebody actively serving. That sadly translates to no one knows.
And being alone. And being alone when you do finally come home, and allowing your brain to make up scenarios where you don't think you have people to talk to. And we do that. We will convince ourselves that we are alone, even if we're not, because sometimes being alone is that comfort that you need. I'm going to sit in my basement and play my video game or watch a stupid movie, and I'm not going to go out and talk to somebody and interact and build that community that's going to protect me as time goes on. It's sometimes easier to be alone. But alone is a dangerous place to be for people. We are, like you said, we are tribal. We are not meant to be alone. There's a reason why when we choose crews for NASA, we have to go through psychological evaluations, and there's proper ways that you create a team that's going to be in close contact and isolated. Because if you don't do it properly, the brain will go a little wacky and it will not be a successful mission.
Correct.
You know, Siberia is the same kind, not Siberia, but Antarctica is the same type of thing. They have to build the team properly because you're going to be isolated.
Correct. And think about the Navy SEALs, right? Their training. Granted, they are physically badasses. No question about that. But the mental component is probably more valuable and important, right? To be truly a successful operator at a high level. I just see that piece. I had another thought, but it just went away.
They always
call
come
that
back.
sometimers. Getting older and the sometimers happens more frequently. But I ignore that part too.
Yeah, no, but it definitely happens. It happens more. Unfortunately, it happens to me more and more as time has been going on.
Right.
But that's to be expected.
True.
But so the community that you're building, and you can see it when you go to you guys' website. It's funny because it almost doesn't talk that much about yoga. Yoga's only listed a couple times when you start talking about the classes and stuff like that. Every bullet statement, every about us, all of it is about community and outreach. Those are the two main points when you go to your website. And I think it's really cool because I think yoga is another tool in the toolbox. That's great.
Yeah.
But you're also focusing on all these other things that people can come together and do together, whether it's equine therapy, whether it's transcendental meditation, Tai Chi, all these other things that you're promoting. So say yoga's not for you. Okay, that's fine. We'll find something for you. We just want to get you up, get you moving, and get you out talking to people and in a community.
Absolutely. So that leads to our newest venture, so to speak, is a behavioral health, and the whole package of behavioral health. Right. Which it does include the conversational talk therapy and all of that, as well as other, parts of that. So we have our COO, he's a combat medic. He multiple tours, all of that. Great guy, came out of California, and he ran the largest veteran service organization in the United States. Veteran America. I'm going to say it wrong. I wrote it down so I would actually remember it. And I forgot. But they're out of Northern California. Anyways, so he is so successful with programs, treatment programs, whether inpatient, outpatient, behavioral health, substance abuse, dual diagnosis, whatever that was. Super, super successful. 80% success rate. That's unheard of. He was on the panels for the VA. How do they replicate some of this, all of this? And his big thing is there is no cookie cutter here. Everybody is different. Everybody comes with a different history. Everybody needs something different. And so I don't have the book. Take this book and throw it away. We are going to create a treatment plan per individual. And by doing it that way, he was so successful. Now, the other piece for me, and I did an interview, 10 years ago with Elephant Journal, and the conversation was, what about the competition in the space? I'm like, competition? What competition? Do you know there's 22 million veterans? And then add their family members, of which is about 80 million. So we're looking at about 100 million. That's a third of the U.S. population. There's no competition. Not one organization can possibly help them. We see the VA, they can't possibly help, and they get funded by the government. So we're all out here. I don't even know how many small little veteran service organizations are out in the United States. I have no idea. I have no idea how many there are, but I can imagine just in my community how many there are. And then if you go and you add that all up, it's huge. It's enormous. Well, we're all small. We're almost all nonprofits, and we all fight for the same donor dollar. Because the sad thing is, children, animals, veterans,
Yeah.
it kind of blows my mind, but that's on the hierarchy of donor dollars. And I said to them, no, we can do more and we can connect them together. That's my big vision. How can we connect them together? So with this behavioral health program, the clinician meets with the veteran. The veteran needs equine therapy, like you said. Yoga, I'm not doing yoga, and nobody's got to make them do yoga. You can't make anybody do anything, but maybe that connects to them. Maybe nature. Maybe they need to be outdoors. Maybe they need aquatic. I don't know. Maybe they need something that I don't even know about. And whatever that is, we plan on adding it to their plan, their treatment plan. So that local veteran service organization will actually get reimbursed. They'll actually get paid for the services instead of going out and trying to do another fundraiser to raise money to provide the services.
So you're getting the organizations connected with the Department of Veteran Affairs to actually become providers, basically, at that point.
CCN, Community Care Network.
Very cool.
We want them to be part of this whole continuum of care for our veterans. We really do. We added first responders a few years ago, and sadly, we just don't get the traction. For whatever the reason, and it's okay, we put it out there. I revisit it, on social media every now and again, but we don't. But when you look at that, 30% of our first responders are veterans. That's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. So I really, I keep wanting to get back in that. And again, we put out feelers, we let them know, and it'll happen. If not with us, with somebody else, so long as it happens, that's all I care about.
As long as they get the care, as long as they're getting what they need. I mean, like you said, it's not a competition. It's about, like you said, there are plenty of people that need help. When you talk about the numbers, it would be an insane thought. It would be like an Apollo type government intervention for everybody to get everything that they need.
Right.
The amount of the GDP that you would have to invest for all of these organizations to just have to go away. That's not going to happen. And even if that did happen, there still would be somebody outlying that would need something specific that it wasn't covered and wasn't in some table or list that the government had. So everybody can help and everybody can get involved.
Absolutely.
Speaking of getting involved.
Yeah.
One of the big things that you do that I really like is you teach teachers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I love that. And I love the fact that you're specifically looking at, hey, veterans might learn a little different. And people that have dealt with trauma, even though everybody has dealt with trauma, and I completely agree with you, but veteran-specific trauma, we'll call it, makes it difficult to connect with certain things and to teach. So you're probably not going to want to just walk into your random yoga studio in San Francisco and think that everything is going to be smooth and perfect and that Marine veteran with 4 tours is going to be happy walking out the door. Correct. You identified that and said, hey, let's train these people to be yoga instructors for veterans specifically. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so, that's so right on. Right, who better to teach a vet than a vet? And I even think about right now, I've read, God knows, so much. I've talked to. I'm not a veteran. I never walked in those shoes. I haven't. Mm-hmm. So I only have so much connection ability, right, with veterans. I could totally connect with a family member because I'm a family member. I get that connection. So we started a program called Elevated Warriors long time ago, and that was because I saw that. And I also know, because I've had veterans in my traditional, quote, mainstream yoga teacher training, and that didn't go well. For all those reasons that we just talked about, it just didn't go well for them. And so I really realized, no, we need to meet them where they are and prepare a training that they can understand, they can work with, and being in a group of like-minded individuals is a big start.
Yeah.
It really is a big start. For one thing, you're all of a sudden, you're in this new little tribe of your training group that is all veterans. You have immediate safety and security right then and there. And so, yeah, some of this might be weird and bizarre, but you're doing it together, and it's all okay that you're doing it all together. On the other side of that, when they finish, the veterans that show up, and even a brand new veteran yoga teacher, I don't even care how good or, quote, how proficient they are. It doesn't matter. Veterans are going to come to the class, and veterans are going to get benefit because veterans came to the class. I don't care if they do 5 postures. It doesn't matter. They're in community. They're breathing together. That alone is creating good chemistry in the body. Oxytocin, that we've heard so much about. Oxytocin is, quote, the love hormone, the happy hormone. Do you know you only produce it when you are in community with like-minded individuals having a good time?
Did not know that.
That's the only way we produce it. So it's really, that is the best thing. So for me, it's taking my traditional 200-hour training, adding in the trauma components that you have to understand, adding in the military components that they already understand, but to convert it to this world, and extending it and not doing it as an intensive. Because if you do that as an intensive, you will go right back into your upregulated being, and the learning ability is not as great. So that is why we take it and space it out a little longer and all of that.
That promotes retention, that promotes ability to actually absorb the information that you, so
Right.
you're not just mission-oriented, task-oriented.
Oh,
Hey,
yeah.
I'm going to
Just
get through
memorize
this
stuff. Yeah, that doesn't work.
Right.
That just doesn't work. This is, and if you've ever done a teacher training for yoga that's really substantive, you realize pretty quickly that what appears to be really easy to do is really difficult to do as the teacher, because there's so many components. You're working on all 4 levels of a human being: the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual, all at the same time. And if you do it poorly, you can really take and create a negative effect on a practitioner. If you do it wonderfully and meeting them where they are, it could have a profound effect on the practitioner in their growth. So yes, we have that. In fact, I'm glad to say this. We are going to start again in this late summer, early fall, a new teacher training for veterans. And our goal is to do this mix of in-person and online. So anybody out there who's practicing yoga, who's a veteran, who has been practicing at least a year, and you feel the significant benefits of this in your world, and you want to share this with other veterans, please reach out to me at judy@connectedwarriors.org. And I am happy to have a conversation with you about it. The other thing that's happening is Honor Yoga is a great franchise yoga organization. They're based out of New Jersey, and they have studios now in multiple states. They have a retreat center in upstate New York, in the I'm going to say it wrong, but in the mountains.
Is it the Catskills?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, that's my neck of the woods.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Beautiful, beautiful retreat center. And they had offered to donate this to veterans. So we could come up and teach veterans and do a little mini retreat, a yoga retreat.
That's great.
And of course, it was scheduled in June of 2020. And so that got canceled.
Yeah.
So we have a few spots left available. And if you would like, please, again, send to me, judy@connectedwarriors.org. You can send me a note. Let me know you're interested. We'll put you on the list. And I think within a month, we're going to push it out again to offer this opportunity to veterans with a yoga practice. We don't cover the cost of your travel there, but we cover all your costs when you get there.
Yeah. And the training that you guys provide to veterans to become certified, you're completely certified when you're done, and it's at no cost to the veteran.
No cost to the veteran.
That's huge.
Zero cost.
That's huge.
Zero cost. Yeah. And because to me, it's the right thing to do. And not only that, it gives me more teachers.
For sure.
You know, there's always a purpose, but no, seriously, I don't care if they ever really teach for us, but it as long as they get in front of veterans, that's all I really care about. Whether it's for me or for one of the other amazing organizations out there that provide these services. I think that would be, if I could see almost all of our teachers for Connected Warriors one day be all veterans or family members of veterans, that would be truly my dream come true. But I have to tell you, the yoga community, it was not hard to get the yoga community online, because for us, our spaces that we teach classes is donated. We don't pay for space. It is donated. And these are every week classes for years. Some of them for years, they donate that space. The teachers donate their time. They donate their time because they believe in this mission so much. They donate their time. And it's just pretty tremendous. We're currently in, pandemic. We're currently in 33 VA hospitals and vet centers in the US, 16 active duty military installations. And we had at one time over 220 classes, I think, a week going on. In our time since 2010, so 11 years, we have had over 200,000 visits and 0 reported suicides.
Wow. That's a huge statistic. That's I will take a second and applaud you just for that one, because that is pretty amazing. Not many organizations can say that. And I've talked to a lot of organizations that deal with combating suicide. That's their primary missions. So to be able to say that's huge, huge.
You know, we don't solve any problems. We don't think anybody's broken. We don't think you guys are broken. We're not trying to fix you at all. We're simply trying to give you some tools that you may not have been given in boot camp, which I know you weren't given in boot camp, which I wish you were given in boot camp. But that's a separate thing for me. And I was starting to say a long time ago, the ROTC program here. So Commander Bingham. So he couldn't get back in the Navy. So what's the next best thing? Let's start a ROTC program in Boca High. So he did. 22 years he did that. His last 3 years, as he put it, he for competition nationals, he was always the bridesmaid, never the bride. So he never won. The year he brought yoga into their training, their PT, they won. The year he retired, so this didn't win the second year after, but the third year they won again. So because Commander was always that commander who would never give his cadets anything he wouldn't do or try himself, he started, and it changed his world. So much that I knew when he was getting ready to retire, he would not have a mission or a purpose anymore. So I made him, I coerced him into doing the training. So he was part of the Elevator Warrior training. And now his biggest dream is to be able to teach the younger veterans. You know, we work with wounded warriors when they do their retreats and their other various and assorted events. And a lot of times they want a yoga component. So we've done that. He's done that with them. They were down at Marlin Stadium. They had a whole long, you know, the ride. They do the ruck marches and all that. And he's been there several times. He gets the biggest joy and benefit from teaching the younger veterans than probably anything else. And that's just huge. One of his cadets, a young woman, she now she's in the Navy. She is a training to be a pilot, fighter pilot. And what she told me was when she was doing her training, that the breath, we call it Ujjayi breath, Victorious breath, I don't know if you know, but it's
Yeah, I've heard the terminology. Yeah.
yeah. So you basically breathe with your epiglottis contracted. So it's the best oxygen CO2 exchange in your lungs that there is at all. And you're doing it in and out of your nose. She used that, and we call them bandhas or locks, where you engage the lower root of you and you lift and hold it to protect your low back and also to keep the energy inside of you. She used both of those when she was going through the centrifugal part of the training.
For the G-force.
Yeah, she said if she didn't have that, she wouldn't have made it through. I have a fighter pilot. He's a retired Air Force pilot. And he decided, because I don't know if you know, but their necks, their spines are trashed based on everything. And just the helmet alone, it's like crazy on your head, weight. So he chose yoga instead of surgeries, spinal surgeries, multiple spinal surgeries. And he is so fully functional. In fact, the Air Force Academy did, they have an alumni magazine, they did a whole article on him and how he went to an alternative pathway than the traditional medicine. And he's in better shape now at his age, retired, than he was back, he thinks, when he was active duty.
But it makes sense. You look at how many sports figures
Tom
are
Brady,
doing yoga
he
now.
practices yoga.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are getting pounded on. Football, hockey's a big one now. You hear a lot about full hockey teams doing yoga. These are guys with no teeth. You'd never picture them in a yoga studio in a million years. Full beard, jacked up with stitches on the bench, and they're doing yoga because they know that they're going to get benefit out of it. It's going to extend their career, and it's going to make their post-career life so much better because their joints aren't going to be as messed up. Their backs aren't, their necks, all that kind of stuff. It does help. I mean, my wife, she swears by it. She'll go into all these different workout programs. She loves working out, and they're like, oh, you have to work out 5 days a week, and you have to do this. She'll do it for like a week, and then she's like, nah, I'm going to modify it because I want to do my yoga 3 days a week or whatever, however she wants to do it. But she won't subtract the yoga out of it because when she does, she doesn't feel as good. She doesn't recover as quickly. Her joints hurt, all that.
Yes, right. So I'll give you a couple examples. So I think of the Seattle Seahawks. The year they won the Super Bowl, they brought yoga.
I would have liked to see Marshawn Lynch doing yoga. That I would have paid for, I think.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. And I think so I've had some professional athletes I've worked with privately. It changed their whole game, completely changed their game. You want to think about, so what we do, our protocol is evidence-based, by the way. We've had 3 university studies. We're working on our 4th. When we think about trauma, it's pretty much goes hand in hand with the low back pain. And that was the big study we did out at UCSD with the VA and the university. And that was yoga and our yoga with back pain. So let me just give you a little, so again, come back to survival, right? The body will survive. So the first thing that the body does when it's dealt with trauma, some sort of significant trauma, whatever it might be, physical, mental, emotional, is the psoas muscles go into flexion. And when I was a kid, that used to happen to me a lot. You go in the fetal position.
Mm-hmm. You shrug.
You're in fetal position, you're a tiny little ball. So for me, I thought I was protecting my head for some reason. I wanted to curl up. No, you're protecting what is called the pelvic abdominal brain, which is the pelvis, because that's the root of the brainstem. That has to survive. You can survive without this prefrontal cortex. You can take it out and go away, and it doesn't ever have to come back. Now, you're not going to have all your functionality as a full-on human, but you will survive. The body-mind will survive. But you cannot survive without the pelvic abdominal component. That's where you hear about the vagus nerve. All your cranial nerves come from there, and they're direct connection up and in. So you have this trauma. The psoas goes into flexion. So you immediately go like this. But because we walk on 2 feet, our brain has to see the horizon. Our eyes have to see the horizon. So then all of a sudden the eyes have to see the horizon. So then the back extensors go into extension to bring us to horizon. Where takes the hit? The lumbar spine. It's being compressed because it's both inflection and extension at the same time, and all that's happening is compression down. That's why when you see back surgeries, back issues, whatever's going on, herniated disc, bulging disc, it's somewhere between L3 usually and S1. The lower lumbars, the sacrum. That's typically, or it's somewhere in the cervical. That's typically where we see this. So how can you get out of that? How can that not happen? Well, what I said earlier is if you shook yourself like crazy, and there's a book called Trauma Releasing Exercises written by Dr. David Berceli, brilliant, simple book. And it basically says, let your body shake from the ground up, from your feet up, all the joints, let them move around, let them do that. It's dissipating that energy, literally dissipating. Get a deep tissue massage, get the psoas muscles to release because they're holding. And then I'm always hot bath, Epsom salt, baking soda, go to bed, wake up, that trauma will dissipate through the body. Now, if we all did that, that would work well, but nobody's doing that on a general basis. They're not. But that's how smart the body mind is. If it's left to its own devices to just do what feels right for it, it will take care of itself.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what you were saying about the difference between us and other animals is that we get caught up, like you said, in this, and it stops us from doing what the body just needs. Whereas other animals, when they deal with trauma or excitement or anything like that, they allow it to happen. They allow it to process through and exit the body. We hold on to it. We try to protect ourselves from it, and in turn kind of do more harm than good usually because we think we're smarter than our bodies.
Correct.
Our brain gets in the way.
Yeah. The stuff in between the ears gets in the way for sure. If you work to connect to the full body, mind, the whole thing, you pretty much have a good chance of enjoying life to your full capacity. And that's really, my objective as a yoga therapist is how can I get my clients to really connect to their full potential? That's it. Because we've all had trauma. So can you work through it? Can you move around it? Can you let it go? You had mentioned something about repressed memories. So think of it this way. If this whole thing has survival and that memory is too much to cope, because trauma is anything that overwhelms your ability to cope, anything. And we all have different levels. Think about when I said we're born with a certain nervous system capacity, maybe, or a state of being. So some have a really resilient, they're born with that. They're just born with a completely resilient. Others, not so much. I was in the not so much category, but because of the dance for me, I was doing bilateral stimulation all the time dancing. I had to be present to be able to balance on one foot, to be able to balance on my toes, to be able to look like I'm graceful and show no effort, right? I had to do all those things. Now that I understand it, it literally saved my life because without it, I don't know where I would be. Really, truly, I don't know. I don't know if I would have survived. I might have gone down that path of, whatever. But that is really the component I want people to understand is if you can take that pause, take the pause, just a moment after an inhale or an exhale. You can then take that tiny pause and keep extending it so that you can control the reaction. You can give yourself the opportunity to realize, no, this is present moment. That is history. The more frequently you can do that in a given day, you will create the ability for yourself to truly be present in the moment again. And especially for combat vets, I know you guys were trained to do it. We have the 8 limbs is kind of like our yogis how to live guide. And I talk about, so the first one, yamas, there's 5, there's those, and then there's 5 niyamas. So I call that the SOP, right? And I make jokes. I said, so in the military, there's a SOP on how to change the roll of toilet paper. Because there is.
Because there is.
There's an SOP for everything.
Every single thing.
Everything. Because otherwise it would be chaos, right?
Of course.
So in the yoga world, we have these 10 kind of SOPs. It's how do we show up ethically in the world, socially? How do we show up personally in the world for ourselves? Then we have what we call asana, which is the postures. You guys know that? PT. That one's easy. You got to be physically fit. Pranayama, you guys know that too. I talk about that as that moment because my husband taught me how to shoot a gun back when we lived in Virginia when he was at Langley. And, I'll never forget, he says, exhale completely. And in that space is when you press the trigger. I'm like, oh, okay. So there's that moment. You guys understand breath control. You do. You really understand that.
Talk to a sniper about breath control. I mean,
Yeah.
they will school you on how to control every twitch in their body and their breath.
Absolutely. We've in special ops, we've had a lot of snipers and they come back and say, I didn't believe it, but it's made it easier. It's made my job easier. Then we have what we call pratyahara, which is about your senses. You guys do that better than anybody. You can control your senses and you can control how you respond with the senses. One of the stories I use is one of our guys, Vietnam veteran, and ran a small Marine unit, a forward unit, and they were doing recon, I'm sure. And they were by a river and they heard the VC come. So they had to become the bushes for almost 24 hours with them right there.
Wow.
That is sense control for sure.
For sure.
And then we have Dharana Dhyana, which has to do with focus and concentration, which you guys could do that. And ability to sustain that, which is meditation. So the reality, I think a lot more warriors have a meditation practice in combat than they don't have in combat, because that's what you have to be. You're so hyper aware and focused. And then the final one is samadhi, which is in the yogic world, that's the thing, that's the great big kahuna. It's like, that's the moment where you're totally present in the quote universe, right? You're one with, you're not separate than. And I use the movie Captain Phillips to illustrate that from the military side. So imagine you have the bad guys who hijacked, right, the Merchant Marine, Tom Hanks, and you have that Tom Hanks, and he's with the bad guys. You have now the good guys come, the Navy, and you have 3 bad guys with Tom Hanks. You have 3 Navy SEALs. This is at night, moving vessels, 1 shot each, bad guys gone. That to me is samadhi. That is the moment you're not cognitively really thinking, you just know and you do. And so I see that it's in the world of yoga, back in history, the Maharajis hired yogis to teach their troops how to be strong, flexible, how to focus, how to breathe, how to meditate, because they had better troops. So it's kind of all the same. And I think we're kind of getting back there, at least I hope so, moving in that direction anyways.
Yeah, it's definitely a symbiotic relationship between what you're trying to do and that warrior spirit that everybody kind of wants to hold on to and relate back to. It's really cool. It really is. I think you're definitely onto something.
Well, thanks, Jason. Yeah. It's been good. Nobody's kicked me out yet.
That's awesome. No, I don't think you should get kicked out. Not at all.
Right.
So now you offer in-person classes for veterans, but you also, and especially during COVID, we're doing virtual classes as well, correct?
Yes. So we have an MOA, a memorandum of agreement with the Department of VA for yoga programming.
Okay.
We're one of 2. I think Veterans Yoga Project's the other one. Dan Libby, great organization. And they, so we get involved with what's happening and all of that. And we created a pilot program last year to provide digital or online or Zoom, whatever you want to call it, access to classes. And it went really, really well. And the goal is to roll this out broader this year in VAs, especially those that are more remote. Because we have a lot of veterans that it's just too difficult to get there. It's a long way away for some of our guys and gals. And we did this locally here in South Florida many years ago. We had our William Kling, which is down in Broward County. The teacher and the hospital they were broadcasting down to Homestead and to Keys into the both of those vet centers. And it went really well. And we did that over the VA's intra-network. So this time it's from the external. And we hope to get that really kind of rolled out here this year as things start opening up. Because, you know, the community piece is what we saw. Most of our veterans did not join those because they really were coming for the community.
Yeah, I could see that.
And I got to say, they were still doing yoga at home, but they found it on their own. Because at least, you know, a lot of these guys and gals, especially in my class, they've been with me for 10, 11 years and they've been practicing. So they found it on their own. And, but they didn't want any interest in doing a Zoom class. They're so happy we're back in person and we're slowly opening up again. Each area, because, you know, this whole, you know, disaster last 15 months, every area is different. So
Right.
kind of responding as the areas come back alive. And one of the things, though, sadly, the yoga industry got hit pretty hard because most yoga teachers don't make a lot of money. You know, they're not doing it to make a lot of money. If you are, you might want to consider a different profession, at least in their beginning years. But they're doing it because in the yoga world, seva, which is service, is priority. We're here to serve. We give back. And, you know, for me, I don't take anything from the organization financial at all. I give my husband's money, you know, and we donate and I give my time and I coerce people I know, clients, all that to give too. So it's an interesting thing what's happened in the yoga world because these teachers, some of them can't afford to give that class this time. They actually have to make money. So it's been kind of difficult. And they've moved and whatever assorted reasons. But if there are any yoga teachers listening to this, we really would love your support and we need your ability to teach this demographic that is so needed in the world. So.
Yeah. So if there's somebody out there, whether you want to learn to teach and you want to teach, if you've been doing it for at least a year, reach out to Judy. If you have a studio and you already currently are teaching and you want to get involved, reach out to Judy. You know, there's ways to get involved. You can go to the website. There's a contact form for getting involved. There's actually, I think, 2 different places you can click. There's a place to donate and all that kind of stuff. There's a place to volunteer your time, and there's a place to get, you know, apply for the certification and all of that. So there's a lot of information if you actually go to the website of how you can help. If this is something that kind of clicks in, you're like, man, I really want to do that, and I have the ability to. I have a yoga studio, or I've been doing this for a long time, and I want to take it to the next level. Yep. Please get over to the website and check all this stuff out.
Yes,
for sure.
Yep. Yeah. So I really appreciate this time, Jason. You know, I love to share all the time and let people know and trying to take the stigma out of yoga and veterans, right? That veterans are a certain thing and that yoga is a certain thing. You know, typically we are afraid of what we don't know.
Yeah, it's a preconceived notion on both sides. It's also the same when you talk about them together. Why would a veteran want to do yoga? You know, but that's just not true. You know what I mean? There's benefit in everything, and each person is an individual, like you said, through like your outreach program and stuff like that. Each person needs their own care, and they don't need to be put into this little box and say, this is what you're going to get, because that's all we can offer you.
Right.
We want to make sure you're getting the care that you need, whether it is, like I said, equine. I just learned about an organization here on Long Island that they're taking veterans out sailing and teaching them sailing.
Yes.
Super cool. Yeah. I'm working with an organization out in California that does surf therapy. Very cool. You know, TM, if you listen to Howard Stern, for anybody that used to listen to Howard Stern back in the day, he is the biggest proponent for TM, Transcendental Meditation. It changed his life if you talk to him about it. He is a very big proponent for TM. So if that's something, whatever you need, let's make sure you get it.
I didn't know that about Howard Stern.
Yes.
So yeah, so David Lynch Foundation works with they're probably the biggest fund, they're huge about TM, and they put it out. The veteran programs are tremendous. We've worked with them locally here in Boca. I've met the guys up in New York City. We just haven't found quite a way how to work together, because yes, TM is absolutely life-changing for people, but it is a little intense for some veterans coming into it right away, because it's more that silent meditation, and the more trauma you have, the scarier that is to be in that space. So we've just never quite found where, because I'm all about safety and security for our guys and gals, so I've just never found a way. But yes, it is absolutely, hands down, I completely agree with you. TM is truly life-changing. And to add another therapy that we see down here, at least in South Florida, is aquatic. So there's several organizations that take veterans out with who are have maybe not as many as, they don't have as ability. So they have some physical disabilities that would make it difficult for them to go scuba diving. And they take them out and go scuba diving. They have, it's just absolutely tremendous what is out there, and how much there are people who want to give back. And what I'm seeing is the veterans themselves now are driving a lot of these small VSOs more than just civilians, which I think is the best. It's the best all the way around.
Yeah, you have a lot of the special operations guys, when they're getting out, they're starting these organizations, they're taking care of their own, and then it kind of bleeds over into the guys that weren't even special operations. And it's like, hey, yeah, you come along and let's do this and let's get it going. It's very cool. And you see all these different organizations that are being run by veterans that are just trying to now kind of continue their service, going back to, like you said, with yoga, being a yogi is service. Being a military member is service, and that service
100%.
doesn't end when you get out. You continue on as a veteran. It's just a different type of service. You just go into your next kind of stage of life, just like we always do with everything.
Exactly.
And that's what's huge.
Yeah, I agree. Just think about the postures. Warrior 1, Warrior 2, reverse warrior, extended warrior. That's already built in to the yoga world, to the military, that, it's all the same.
Yeah. Like I said, the parallels are right there. You don't even have to look for them.
That's so true. That's so true.
Well, Judy, I can't thank you enough. I've had a blast talking to you. I've almost found myself just listening to you, because I'm really interested in like the whole story and everything that you've been talking about. So I apologize if I haven't been interacting as much as I've done in previous times. I really just enjoyed listening to you. It's super interesting what you're doing, and I hope that people take this opportunity, head over to the website, get the information. If you want to get involved, contact. If you know somebody that can benefit from everything that Judy's doing, please steer them that way. Get them over. There's the online classes, there's the community classes, there's everything that's going on, and there's more and more as they continue on with the outreach. There's going to be more and more stuff. So please be on the lookout for what they have going on.
Thank you, Jason. That was wonderful. I appreciate you having me. And yes, I tend to talk a lot.
Not a problem at all.
Opportunity.
No, I like it. It's the way, people want to hear you guys talk. They don't want to hear me talk. They can hear me talk anytime. You're the one with the information.
So by the way, we have a lot of classes up in the Manhattan area, the whole seaboard. We have classes in the VAs up there. So, we have a lot of going on in New York.
I think I might have to plan a field trip for the wife and I. I mean, the wife is already doing it, so I think she'd get a kick out of going and watching me do it.
Right. Well, I'm happy to come up your way to put something together. So
that'd be awesome.
Travel is back. So
yeah, we're back at it.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much. Like I said, get out to that website, check everything out. Please follow them on Instagram, Facebook, all that kind of fun stuff. Get all your information that way. They're always posting stuff, so you definitely will get everything you need to.
Yep.
All right. Well, you have a great day, okay?
Thanks. You too. Take care.
All righty.
Bye.
Bye.